He's back. Even if I hadn't seen the press release, I would have figured it out by all the messages y'all sent me. If you haven't heard yet, either because you live under a rock or because you avoid all Dream Theater news like the plague, Mike Portnoy has rejoined Dream Theater. I seriously could not open my social media on Wednesday without seeing someone's post pop up immediately first, talking about how Mike Portnoy came back. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it, he's back. But yes, Mike Portnoy, founding member of Dream Theater, has returned. So why is this such a big deal? If you are among one of the uninitiated, let me get you caught up. Mike Portnoy is known for being the drummer and co-founding the band Dream Theater, the premier progressive metal band who set the standard for the genre and raised the bar for writing and performance in metal. Mike has floated around with many projects throughout the years. He's played with Neil Morse, Transatlantic, Metal Allegiance, Winery Dogs, Liquid Tension Experiment, which is basically just instrumental Dream Theater. And he has collaborated on many of the most highly influential prog records of the last 25 years. Some may even remember that he did a short stint with Avenged Sevenfold, but we don't talk about that. Mike Portnoy is one of the most influential drummers of all time. He has won countless awards from many of the most prestigious drum authorities in the world. Many drummers today cite him as an extremely important part of their personal development. While Mike Portnoy and Dream Theater have not made the biggest splash in the popular music realm, in the realm of music lovers and musicians, he and the other members of Dream Theater are highly regarded. So Mike coming back to Dream Theater is massive news in our community, but then that begs the question, why did he leave? Like I had said before, Mike Portnoy was a founding member of Dream Theater back in 1985, and over the next 25 years, he'd co-write some of the most important prog and metal records of our time. Now, I'm going to recount this departure as best I can. There isn't a lot known about them, and many of the details are not confirmed, so please keep that in mind. If I get something incorrect, please let me know in the comments down below, and please cite your references. I would love to learn more and make sure that my audience is getting the correct information. After the release of Black Clouds and Silver Linings, Mike expressed that he wanted Dream Theater to take a break. Everyone else in the band was loving how things were going and were feeling this great sense of momentum that they wanted to capitalize on. Mike was feeling creatively squeezed and wanted to stretch his wings on some other projects and styles. He was hoping the band would just take a break, but since everyone else wanted to keep going, they all decided it was just best if he departed. This was not an easy decision to come to. So while it was sad, I imagine their relationships would have been maintained if that's all there was to it. But like many bands and many relationships, things just are more complicated. After Mike left, fans were very sad. The Petrucci-Portnoy crossover was some of the best stuff we had ever heard at the time, an amazing combo for decades, and we were pining for more. But it added an extra layer of remorse when fans could kind of tell there seemed to be some bad blood between Portnoy and other members of the band, and no one could really tell why because no one was talking about it. And that made it seem very unlikely that Portnoy would ever return. And over the next 10 years, this silence between Portnoy and the rest of Dream Theater would mostly continue. Many fans would be extremely vocal about how much they missed Portnoy, and also very vocal about how much they dislike Mangini or how he plays like a robot. I've already given my opinions on this, especially in the interview I did with John Petrucci. I think Mangini got a raw deal from the fans, especially considering he's like the nicest dude on the planet. Dude got a dream job working for one of the most important bands in metal of all time, has humbly decided to accept that to support the band, and then just gets endless shit from the fans. What a tragedy. Poor Mike Mangini endured that for 10 years, but around 2019, we started seeing some posts from Petrucci and Portnoy on their social pages of them getting a little snuggly around the Christmas time. This may seem small, insignificant, stupid, but it was significant enough for every metal outlet to write an article about it. The following year, it was announced that Mike Portnoy would be playing the drums on John Petrucci's solo record. So now, the thought of Mike Portnoy maybe coming back was even being teased a little bit harder, just a little bit more. The next year, Liquid Tension Experiment, which involves 3 of the members of Dream Theater, released a new album. At this point, fans were rabid, just foaming at the mouth, losing all sense of rationality. But even with all this teasing, there's no way Mike Portnoy is coming back to the band, right? Not a chance in hell. I mean, maybe he'd rejoin for like an anniversary tour or something, you know, just kind of be like nice and like, hi, we're still friends, haha. But he's never coming back, right? Well, the wet dreams of many young virgins around the world came true on Wednesday, October 25th, 2023, when Dream Theater announced the triumphant return of Mike Portnoy. When I first saw the news, my first thought was, wow, I can't believe that actually happened. My second thought was, I hate that they announced this day. I'm on vacation with my parents and I can't work right now. But then my next immediate thought was, wait, what about Mangini? So Mangini's official statement was, I understand Dream Theater's decision to get Mike Portnoy back at this time. As was said from day one, my place was not to fill all the roles Mike held in the band. I was to play the drums in order to help the band carry on. My main role of keeping our live show working tightly on a nightly basis was an intense and rewarding experience. And he goes on to talk about how much he loves the band, blah, blah, blah. You know, the usual stuff. I'm not trying to put that down, just like not prevalent to this story. If you want to read the full statement, I have a link to the press release from Dream Theater in the description. You can go check that out for yourself. So after reading that, this sounds to me like Mike Mangini did not have a primary contribution to the writing process. Interesting. He was basically there because Dream Theater needed a drummer, and he was good enough to execute, and he's a great hang on the road. Okay, this is painting a bit more of a picture for me. So in one sense, I feel very sad for Mangini. I mean, what do you do when the band comes up to you and says, hey, our founding member, longtime friend, and one of the most influential drummers in the world would like his spot back in our band, please? No is not an option here. But as with all things with him, it appears as though Mangini is handling this entire situation very graciously. All seems amicable between all the parties involved, and I hope that appearances are reflective of reality, and I really wish the best to Mike in all of his future endeavors. Quick update while I'm editing this video. Looks like Mike Mangini just announced the following day that he has a solo record coming out. So I'm not sure what to think of that, but the timing is certainly very interesting. Just worthy of noting here, considering we just talked about his future endeavors. But then on the other hand, am I excited to have Mike Portnoy back in Dream Theater, my favorite band ever? Yeah. A little bit, yeah. I'm not bawling my eyes out like a bunch of the other weirdos I've seen on Instagram and Facebook. Dear Lord, get a life, please. Bro, it's a band. It's a band you've never met. You don't know these guys. I've never met these people. I've had one really cool conversation with one of the founding members, and it was great. I loved it. It was a fulfilling experience. But I'm not crying because Mike Portnoy is coming back. Yes, they are my heroes, and it's very beautiful seeing them mend these relationships, not to mention the prospect of potentially having more amazing art that I get to love. But let's remember they're human beings that we've never met, probably never talked to. And let's also remember the proof is in the pudding. I don't just slurp up content because somebody I like made it, and you shouldn't either. So I'd say as far as getting more great Dream Theater albums, I'm very positive on that. And I'm incredibly happy for all of them, both as individuals and as a band. It must be such a healing and fulfilling experience to finally reunite like this. Please remember, they aren't Jesus. They are some incredibly talented men who have made some really great art that's very important to me. And I believe they can make some more in the future. So that's my emotional response. But what about the more rational response? What do I predict is going to happen here? Are we going to get a new Dream Theater renaissance? Well, I have some thoughts on that, and if you would be gracious enough to follow me down this logic train for a second, let's take a look at the Dream Theater discography. So I've broken these albums up into 3 eras. We got the early era right here. We got the Jordan Rudess era, which is pretty prominent, and we have the Mangini era when Mike Portnoy left. Now let's examine the albums that have the absolute most praise. I would say Absolutely Images and Words, huge deal of an album. Awake gets a lot of praise, but I don't know, sometimes it feels like it's a little bit on the edge, but you know what, we'll include these. So 2 highly praised albums right here. Then we have Scenes from a Memory, which is like obnoxiously well praised. I would say overly praised. 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence gets a ton of love. Train of Thought gets a ton of love. Octavarium gets a ton of love. Systematic Chaos gets a decent amount of love. I think it's maybe a smidge underrated. but whatever. Black Clouds and Silver Linings gets a decent amount of love. This, I would argue, is the strongest Dream Theater era. It was just like the lineup of magic, right? Then Portnoy leaves, and we get Dramatic Turn of Events, which is my favorite album, personally. But then we have the self-titled album, which I don't think people were super thrilled on. We had the Astonishing, which is very polarizing, taking some big chances. Then we have a drastic turn with Distance Over Time, where they kind of simplified things in some regards, kind of brought it back, made it a little bit more raw. Then we have View from the Top of a World, which seems to be liked. Just put it that way, it seems to be well liked. This album changed the game for metal in prog. This album changed the game for metal in prog. This one probably did too. This one, somewhat, but not exactly. Octavarium changed the game. I don't think any of these albums post Portnoy changed the game. I don't know. It doesn't quite come across to me. Not that any of these albums are bad. I would say the self-titled one is probably the weakest of the bunch, but it's not even a bad album. And if you think about how the sound has developed through all of the Portnoy years, I mean, we can pretty much discard the first record, let's be honest. So we have like the establishment of a really new dynamic sound, and then it changes a little bit into something a little bit more raw and natural. Then it gets something that's like trying to be mainstream, but not, I don't know. Falling Into Infinity was a weird era that some people really like. I didn't quite get into it. But then we have like a reinvigoration. It's like they took from their old album and just kind of like represented all of that with this fresh face with Rudess joining the band. Then we had 6 Degrees, which goes even deeper into this and kind of shifts the perspective from like a Pink Floyd almost-esque kind of thing. Then we go into Train of Thought, which seems to pull a lot from like nu metal type of stuff going on. And like, see, as we progress, they each have a distinct personality, but they all kind of push the limits on certain songs as to what the band can barely identify as Dream Theater still, you know what I mean? Then we get to the Mangini era, and it feels like the one that really pushed the limits the most was The Astonishing. And again, very polarizing album for understandable reasons. But this one actually got me excited. The rest of these just kind of felt like comfy Dream Theater, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but it didn't get me like really excited. And it certainly didn't seem to chug along with how the rest of the music industry was evolving. We know Mike Portnoy was a strong part of the writing process through his time in Dream Theater, and we know that he and Petrucci were primary collaborators. I am unclear with how much input Rudess has had since his joining of Dream Theater. I imagine he's had at least some important input since he joined, but definitely a primary collaborator after Portnoy left. So it's pretty clear that when Portnoy left, there was a big impact on the writing. Again, my favorite album is Dramatic Turn of Events, so I'm not saying that anything after he left is crap or bad or insufficient. Just that after this many albums post Portnoy, I think it's fair to say something feels like it's missing from either the original sound or the direction or something like that. Now, on the flip side, instead of this new trajectory of Dream Theater being a result of Portnoy leaving, you could make the argument it's just a symptom of growing older and changing. As we get older, we tend to like more familiarity and less novelty. While the Mangini era albums do have distinct personalities of their own, the only one that was really strongly convention breaking in regards to Dream Theater was The Astonishing. And they could just be happy with this general sound and not want to venture too far from it. I think you can see that with John Petrucci's latest solo release and with Liquid Tension 3. It's good stuff, but it feels like we've listened to something similar to these ideas before. Would Portnoy joining the band now really change that, especially after hearing his contributions to those other two projects? Well, maybe. If you follow Mike Portnoy's YouTube channel at all, he had done a series a few years ago where he was sharing with us his vinyl collection. If you're not a fan of his, I imagine it's kind of boring, but I mean, if you are a fan of his, it's actually very interesting. Seeing the stuff that he loves and hearing why he loves it is quite enlightening for fans of his. And if you check those videos out, you'll see he has a very eclectic music palette.
Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique, an absolute masterpiece from start to finish.
Through Dream Theater's catalog, you can kind of hear them experimenting with sounds that were popular in rock at the time. And I want to think a lot of that was Portnoy's influence. I don't know for sure, but based upon what I've heard from the other members, I think this might be the case. When I interviewed John Petrucci, I asked him what his favorite new prog metal act was, and he said he didn't really keep up with them much. And for the record, that's totally cool. I mean, listen to what you love. Can't blame a guy for doing that. If I had to guess, he probably loves his classic prog and Metallica. It's my guess. And if we look at Jordan Rudess's latest solo release, it was pretty interesting, but I certainly wouldn't call it modernly hip or even really a Dream Theater sound for that matter. It was kind of its own thing, and it was cool, and that was cool. So it kind of makes me wonder, when Mike Portnoy was a member of the band, how much he contributed to them pushing outside of their natural Dream Theater sound comfort zone. Mike seems to be the most in touch with the more modern, hip stuff that's happening right now, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe it was that element of freshness and being in touch with how music was evolving that got lost when Mike left. Again, this is completely speculation. I don't know any of this for sure, and I certainly do not want to insinuate anyone is bad or inferior or anything like that for liking or disliking anything. Okay, just get that clear. But based upon what I've seen and how I've evaluated things, this is what my gut is telling me. So if my intuition is correct, the next question becomes, will Portnoy be able to inject this element back in a Dream Theater? That question is still up in the air for me. If we take a look at two of Portnoy's most prominent side projects since he left Dream Theater, there was a distinct lack of breaking convention. Winery Dogs was pretty cool. I loved seeing them live. It was a lot of fun. Incredibly talented guys, but when you go to the records, it was just, kind of dad rock, which is good, but it's dad rock. I feel like those songs gave them some blank canvases live in which they could demonstrate their virtuosity over, and that was really cool. Loved that aspect of it. Then there was Sons of Apollo, which made me very disappointed because I was so excited about the lineup. They had so much incredible, legendary talent in that group. But the writing kind of felt a little disjunct, kind of like old Fates Warning type of stuff. And the production was not very great. There was not a fresh bone in any of that art's body. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. You love what you love, but it just didn't interest me. So keeping in mind that I do not know how much writing involvement Mike Portnoy had in either of these projects, and every band has a different mission. Just because Mike Portnoy is in the band does not mean the ethos of that band is the Dream Theater ethos. So will he bring that element of freshness back to Dream Theater while also giving us some familiarity with the Mike Portnoy drum parts? I think it's too early to say. But given what I am able to deduce over the entirety of Dream Theater's career, I would say Mike Portnoy rejoining the band is a very good sign. A big part of why I love Dream Theater is because they continually redefined prog and progressive metal throughout their careers. And I think an element of that kind of ended with Black Clouds and Silver Linings. But then the other thought comes into my mind. Given how much progressive metal has grown around them with the rise of bands like Periphery, Animals as Leaders, Polyphia, is it maybe just too late for them to redefine this genre because the genre has kind of moved on, for lack of a better term? I certainly wouldn't want Dream Theater to be inauthentic to themselves and try and write something that sounds like this mathy genty stuff. I'm not excited about that. Maybe if they did like a twist on it, that'd be cool. Like they did a twist on nu metal with some of the stuff in Train of Thought, but I don't know. I'm curious. They did have some fabulous momentum for many years, and I don't think it's outside the realm that they could bring that back. But they definitely do need to do something to, for lack of a better term, become artistically relevant in the new zeitgeist of metal and progressive metal. I mean, I guess they don't really have to. They're Dream Theater. They're going to put an album out and everyone's going to say they love it and everyone's going to review it, say it's the greatest thing ever. Give them a Grammy for an album that is basically just saying we should have given you a Grammy for all of these albums. I'm not saying Dream Theater are old. I'm not saying that they put out bad or boring stuff. I absolutely know they can put out killer albums, and it's just, things have changed. Not trying to crap on Dream Theater. It's not what's happening here. I'm trying to have an objective assessment of the situation. I love this band. Mike Portnoy rejoining the band, I think, is their best bet of getting some of that freshness back, some of that creativity, while ironically having some familiarity at the same time. I really want to see Dream Theater push themselves far outside their comfort zones, like they did with The Astonishing. I feel so bad that some of the fan backlash on that album was as harsh as it was. It's like, no, we need more of the same. You can't do something different. You can't take chances. How dare you try and fulfill yourself? This is about me, damn it. Your music's about me. Bunch of twits. I would love for Dream Theater to take another big chance like that. It doesn't even have to be that extravagant or elaborate, just like something that bold. I miss that boldness. So many of these fans, and frankly, fans of many bands, just love fapping to the nostalgia. Yes, more of the same, please. Yes, I am boring and insecure. But then on the flip side, if you do something bold, there's going to be a ton of fans out there that will be happy with anything that has a Dream Theater logo slapped on it. Okay, we're getting into the weeds. Look, I am very positive on this. Very positive on Mike Portnoy coming back. So happy for all of the guys that they get to mend these relationships and they get to work together again as Dream Theater. That's gotta feel so freaking good. I imagine the JP solo album and Liquid Tension 3 were kind of like test runs of just like slowly edging Mike Portnoy back into it. See how it feels after all this time. I'm sure it felt like a glove and they loved it. They loved it. And even if the new album they just began working on doesn't knock my socks off for whatever reason, I will at very least be happy for that. But I'm thinking this next one's gonna be something special. I'm hoping this next one is gonna be something special. So that's what I think. I would love to know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments down below. And if you haven't seen any of my latest videos, it's because I'm not trying to frickin' chase algorithm numbers anymore. I'm trying to make stuff I'm actually proud of. I know. Shocker for a YouTuber. I'll have some links to stuff down there. I'm starting a series talking about the meaning of music, which is extremely dense and very important. I would highly recommend checking that out. Basically dissecting why music is one of the most important elements of human existence. Like, not joking, not exaggerating. I also remixed Billie Jean, link to that in the description. That was a lot of fun. There was so much fun going through that session and just examining different bits and having fun looking at all the stories and learning a lot about production as well. There'll be some other bits down there too. Go check them out. Go have some fun. All right. Love you guys. Thank you. Good day.